good morning. Welcome to the 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA, happening at the International Conference Center here in the Federal Capital Territory. I'm Ruth Aguela. Now, part of activities to mark the 7th consecutive democratic transition of power is why this lecture is happening, talking about the 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture, a significant milestone in the country's democratic journey, which began in 1999. The lecture's theme is Deepening Democracy for Development, as part of ways to foster national unity, inclusivity, and democratic consolidation in Nigeria, with a hope to bridge the divide among political, ethnic, and religious affiliations. For the next few hours, we'll be guiding you on activities of this significant event. Please stay tuned to the Nigerian Television Authority.
Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Amina Mohammed, President of the Africa Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, National Youth Leader APC, Mr. Dayo Israel, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the team that have come along with His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful day in Abuja today, with early morning showers of rain. I warmly welcome you to the 2023 Inauguration Lecture, which sets the tone for the inauguration of the President-elect and the Vice President-elect. My name is Eugenia Abu. I'm a broadcaster and multimedia strategy expert, and I am working today with my colleague, my friend and brother, broadcaster and interviewer extraordinaire, Mr. Cyril Stover.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me welcome to the podium a man who has led a stellar team of men and women to deliver an inauguration such as this, the inauguration activities. Please permit me to invite up here His Excellency, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Chairman, Presidential Transition Council, Boss Mustafa.
Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, Your Excellency, the former President of the Republic of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellency, the Vice President-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, GCON, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, members of the Federal Executive Council here present, the National Chairman of the All Progressive Congress and all members of the Executive Committee, Your Royal Highness, the Sultan of Sokoto, who is a contributor at this inauguration lecture, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, Bishop Matthew Kuka, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, and the youth leader of the APC, permanent secretaries, Royal Highnesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press. It is with great honor and privilege that I stand before you today on this momentous occasion of the 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture with the theme, Deepening Democracy for Development. In my capacity as the Chairman of the Presidential Transition Council, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome every one of you to this auspicious event. First and foremost, I would like to commend President Muhammadu Buhari for his unwavering dedication to strengthening democracy in Nigeria. Throughout his tenure, he has consistently emphasized the importance of democratic principles, the rule of law, and good governance. His commitment to upholding the integrity of electoral processes, enhancing transparency, and combating corruption has been commendable. Likewise, his efforts towards ensuring the active participation of citizens in decision-making. In like manner, I welcome His Excellency, the Vice President-elect, Kashim Shettima, GCON, for gracing this occasion with his esteemed presence. His leadership and dedication and unwavering commitment to the progress of our nation have been an inspiration to all. Furthermore, I extend a warm welcome to His Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, former President of the Republic of Kenya, who has graced us with his profound insights in previous occasions, and I think he will do similarly today. Your wealth of experience, Your Excellency, in governance, regional integration, and socio-economic transformation is highly esteemed, and we eagerly await the wisdom and knowledge you would impart upon us. Undeniably, Nigeria has experienced deep divisions and polarizations exacerbated by politics, poverty, and illiteracy. Political, ethnic, religious, and other fault lines have strained the fabric of our society, threatening the very essence of our unity. We acknowledge the damaging influence of hate news, disinformation, and the propagation of divisive narratives which have sown seeds of discord and hindered our socio-political development. In the light of these pressing concerns, the theme of this inauguration lecture, Deepening Democracy for Development, assumes paramount significance. It is our firm belief that by embracing this theme, we can transcend the existing fault lines and foster a renewed sense of common purpose, understanding, and shared responsibility among Nigerians. The profound significance of this lecture lies in its power to illuminate the path we must continue to traverse as a nation, deepen our democratic values, and unlock the full potential of our developmental aspirations. It is an occasion that calls for introspection, evaluation, and concerted efforts to strengthen our democratic institutions, practices, and processes. This gathering represents the essence of our collective aspirations as we come together to discuss and reflect upon the path we have traversed and the road that lies ahead. The 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture serves as a platform for dialogue and enlightenment and the sharing of ideas, all aimed at fostering the growth and development of our beloved nation. Today's program of events encompasses a wide array of topics that are pivotal to the progress and unity of our nation, from deepening democracy for development and integration to religious tolerance, economic growth, security, and youth inclusiveness. We have deliberately chosen these themes to provoke thoughtful conversations and generate actionable solutions. Through robust discussions and engagement, we hope to foster a collective vision for a better Nigeria. We are therefore honored to have in our midst an illustrious lineup of speakers, each a visionary in their respective fields, who have graciously accepted our invitation to share their wisdom and insight. As I mentioned earlier, we are privileged to have the former President of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, as our keynote speaker, who brings with him a wealth of experience and a profound understanding of the complex dynamics between democracy and development. We are equally delighted to have the esteemed Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence, Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, CFR, MNI, and the Most Reverend Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, who will enlighten us on the crucial topics of religious tolerance and inclusiveness. Their words will serve as beacons of light, guiding us towards uniting a harmonious society where all Nigerians can coexist peacefully, regardless of their religious affiliations. Furthermore, we are honored to have Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, CON, the President of the African Development Bank, who will share his invaluable insights on further strengthening of our economy during the Tinubu years. His expertise and guidance will undoubtedly foster or steer us toward enhanced sustainable economic growth and prosperity. We are also privileged to have Ms. Amina Mohammed, GCON, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, who through a recorded message will be sharing her deep understanding of the intersectionality between security and development. She will shed light on the path to achieving a secured and prosperous Nigeria. And finally, we have the youthful and esteemed Dio Israel, the national youth leader of the All Progressive Congress, who will emphasize the critical importance of youth inclusiveness in governance. His perspective will remind us of the immense potential that lies within our vibrant youth population and the need to improve them or empower them as catalysts for positive change. In conclusion, let us approach this inauguration lecture with open hearts and open minds, ready to embrace the wisdom shared by our esteemed speakers. May their insight ignite our imaginations, challenge our perspectives, and spur us to take bold and decisive actions that deepen our democracy and accelerate our journey towards sustainable development. May this inauguration lecture be the catalyst that propels us towards the Nigeria we continually envision, a Nigeria that thrives on democracy, embraces inclusivity, and realizes the aspiration of its people. Thank you once again, welcome, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation there was Mustafa, and Chairman of the Presidential Transition Council, speaking on the importance of strengthening democratic values for the prosperity of the nation. If we recall, the theme for the 29th May inauguration ceremony is Nigeria Better Together. Now, no better time to demonstrate the essence of being united as a people through peaceful coexistence as Nigerians await the beginning of a new era another 4 years of democratic governance come May 29th. Very shortly we'll be having the lecture from the former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, with the theme Deepening Democracy for Development.
Kenyatta, CGH, is the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya. He served as president for 2 terms between 2013 and 2022. He had previously served as a member of parliament, leader of the opposition, minister for local government, deputy prime minister, and minister of finance. Former President Kenyatta's presidency was underpinned by a commitment to economic and social transformation.
Now, part of the essence of this inaugural lecture, talking about the 2023 presidential inauguration lecture, will focus on ways to bridge division, promote inclusivity, strengthen the economy, address security challenges, and empower the youth. These are some of the key areas the keynote speaker will be talking about former President Uhuru Kenyatta, whose profile has been read out now.
Constitution in 2010, His Excellency Kenyatta presided over the rolling out of an ambitious program to restructure the Kenyan state, involving large-scale political, fiscal, and administrative decentralization. During his last term, His Excellency Kenyatta was chair of the African Union Peace and Security Council and the Summit of East Africa Community Heads of State. In addition, he was the chair of the African Leaders Malaria Alliance, a coalition of African Union heads of state and government to drive accountability and action for results against malaria. He also served as the president in office of the Organization of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, comprising 79 African, Caribbean, and Pacific states. In addition, he is still serving as a member of the High-Level Panel for Sustainable Ocean Economy, a unique initiative of 14 serving world leaders to build momentum towards a sustainable ocean economy. While still in power, His Excellency Kenyatta served as a global leader for the Young People's Agenda under the UN-led Generation Unlimited Initiative, Gen-U, which seeks to ensure that by 2030, all young persons aged 10 to 24 are in school, training, or employment. In July 2022, before his retirement from the presidency, the former president was endorsed as Global Champion for Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program by world leaders. All the regional level and at the regional level, former President Kenyatta championed regional integration, intra-Africa trade, and a more vital role of the African continent on the global stage. In addition, he was at the forefront of promoting peace and security efforts in the region. Following his retirement from presidency in August 2022, His Excellency Kenyatta was appointed as the East Africa Community Facilitator of the Nairobi Process Inter-Congolese consultations aimed at restoring peace, security, and stability in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The former president also serves as a special envoy for the Horn of Africa and Great Lakes region, alongside 3 other mediators appointed to spearhead the Ethiopia-Tigray AU-led peace talks. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me at this point humbly invite His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, CGA, the keynote speaker at today's inauguration lecture, to now deliver his lecture. Your Excellency.
Your Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Your Excellency, Vice President-elect, Senator Kashim Shettima, all elected leaders here present, Your Eminences, traditional leaders here present, leaders of our different faiths here present, Your Excellency, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by saying a good morning to all of you, and at the very onset, to take this opportunity to thank you, President Buhari, and your entire team for inviting me to Abuja for the second time in under a year to engage together with you in meaningful discourse with leaders of Nigeria. I must, at a personal level, however, confess my great affinity to a man who I consider to be one of my closest colleagues when I was in government, but also a wise and sober father figure in the name of President Buhari. Indeed, as a son who retired before the father, I look forward to welcoming you to the very exclusive club of former African presidents, a club that remains exclusive because it only admits members who have willingly retired from office. Indeed, it is a great honor and privilege for me to join you all this morning on a weekend when the country is preparing itself to witness its 7th consecutive civilian leadership transition. Your Excellencies, this is not a moment to be taken for granted. And to this end, I must take this opportunity to extend my most heartfelt and sincere congratulations to the people of Nigeria for choosing yet again to walk the more difficult path, to look past the challenges of a difficult election, and to embrace the learnings that come from a maturing democracy. In every high-stakes contest, there will always be those who emerge victors and also those who will end up being losers. What has set Nigeria apart from many nations on our continent today is that its leaders have chosen to disappoint the naysayers and the prophets of doom and have opted instead to express their political differences within the framework of a constitutional order. This is not an easy thing to do when there are many other ways and means to express dissatisfaction, methods that could easily trigger civil unrest, lead to loss of life, and cause irreparable harm to your nationhood. In the unlikely event that no one has mentioned it to you, let me say it today, that Nigeria is a country blessed with a generation of great leaders, both inside and outside of the government. Be they in Aso Rock, in Lagos, or Anambra, I salute you all for steering the nation peacefully up to this milestone moment. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was invited here to speak on the topic of deepening democracy for development, a subject that remains close to my heart And it is my hope that you shall permit me to speak freely and to say things as they are, so that you can glean the most from my own experiences and observations as a former head of state. Experiences that not only celebrate success, but that equally acknowledges challenges. And I want to speak to you not as a Kenyan speaking to Nigerians, but as one African speaking to fellow Africans. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the last set of African nations to attain self-rule and independence from the shackles of colonialism and apartheid was 33 years ago in 1990, when Nelson Mandela and Sam Nujoma took the reins of their respective countries. One would have expected that 3 decades on from the departure of those who had oppressed, discriminated, and exploited our people for centuries, that our continent, Africa, would find herself to be not only more prosperous, but socially and economically stable. That we would have harnessed our immense God-given mineral wealth, our agricultural potential, and our abundant human capital to propel the well-being of our citizens and to strengthen our voice in the global community of nations. It is sad to note that today, many thousands of our children are migrating to Europe on fishing boats, fleeing from chaos and poverty, and braving harrowing dangers in search of a so-called better life. Over the last 5 decades, more than half the countries in Africa have experienced some form of armed conflict. African states have either been at war with each other or at war with themselves. Today, as I stand before you, there are at least 15 active theaters of non-international armed conflict on our continent, with a few more tittering on the brink. But we must go back and ask ourselves, why are we here? We must remember that when our borders were carved up in European boardrooms in the late 1880s, our societies were torn apart by boundaries that do not reflect how we would have chosen to organize ourselves. Traditional kingdoms were split or destroyed in their entirety. Those who shared common languages and other fraternal bonds found themselves on different sides of arbitrary borders. And in some cases, the colonialists imposed one community to superintend over others as part of their divide and rule strategy that would allow them to govern indirectly. In very few parts of Africa was any border drawn to accommodate religious and ethnic homogeny. As a consequence, we found ourselves inside countries that were somewhat a mixed bag. But I believe, as some would say, that you deal and live with what you're dealt with and make the most of it. Why do I say so? I say so because these differences, in and of themselves, are not fatal. They only become toxic if we as a people let them. We must start to see strength in our diversity if we are really serious about assuming our rightful place in this world as Africans. And why do I mention this? Because it is important to understand the genesis of most of these conflicts and what impact they have on our development trajectory as a continent. We must strive to identify the natural fissure lines existing within our societies that make it so easy for conflict to thrive and for democracy to be undermined. Against this backdrop, we can drill down to what I feel and believe are the three fundamental issues that are so easily weaponized to the detriment of our democratic growth. The first of these is negative ethnicity or tribalism, followed by religion, and lastly, economic greed. When you look deeply at the crux of most of our conflicts within our continent, we are either fighting for ethnic or sub-ethnic superiority of one community at the expense of others, or we are propagating divisive narratives that have their origins in religious differences or sectarianism. As we sit here today, we know for a fact that some of these elements I have mentioned remain a clear and present danger for the future of Nigeria. The incoming administration has a unique opportunity to use this inflection point brought about by a peaceful and orderly transition to take stock of what sort of future it wants for the people of this country and for the future of this nation. Will Nigeria continue fighting for its place on the world stage with one hand tied behind its back? Or will it use this moment in time to embrace a brave new way of doing things and thereby unleashing the full might of this green giant? As you ponder on that thought, allow me to take you back to a time in 2013 when I was first elected into office. At that time, I was facing the most serious challenge of my life, both as an individual and in my capacity as president. I was facing a trial at The Hague for alleged crimes against humanity, charges that were later proven to be unfounded. As I went on to settle into State House, I found myself introspecting more and more as to how I ended up in this unenviable position and what were the deeper issues and what these could be. I summarized at the time that it was an unfortunate side effect of the deeply contested 2007 elections that led to widespread inter-ethnic violence, causing the loss of some 1,300 lives and the displacement of over 600,000 Kenyans from their homes. At the center of this violence was fighting between the tribes or ethnic communities ostensibly associated with the leading political actors of the day. My predecessor and the third president of Kenya, His Excellency the late Mwai Kibaki, the leader of the opposition at the time, the Honorable Raila Odinga, my successor and the 5th President of Kenya, William Ruto, and of course yours truly, myself, as the party leader of the then Kenya African National Union and a supporter of the incumbent President Mwai Kibaki. What started off as an election dispute over results between political parties very quickly escalated into a full-scale conflict between different ethnic communities whose perceived historical differences were easy powder kegs to ignite. How did we get to this low point? Whereas what happened in 2007 was unprecedented in its scale and ferocity, election-related violence was not a new phenomenon in Kenya per se. We had seen some different manifestations of ethnic-based electoral violence from the early 1990s with the reintroduction of multi-party democracy. However, nothing was like what we were to witness in 2007 and 2008. With a country of 43 distinct ethnic communities, having been led exclusively by 2 tribes from independence, we had always found a way to gloss over the issues of negative ethnicity, hoping that by ignoring the issue, it would somehow sort itself out. Nothing could have been further from the truth. In fact, in the year 2002, after what many say was Kenya's first truly democratic multi-party elections, a new government was ushered in that raised the expectation of the citizenry. Hopes were high that equitable development, economic uplift would impact the lives of every Kenyan without discrimination. During this brief honeymoon phase, the country's economy boomed, with Kenya posting a real GDP growth rate of 6.9% at the close of 2007. However, trouble was brewing, and the coalition in power started to strain at the seams. The feeling that electoral promises on the distribution of political power among different communities were not being honored all came to the fore. The differences came out in the open when the first attempt was made at a constitutional referendum in 2005. The government-sponsored referendum bill was resoundingly rejected by we who were in the opposition, and unfortunately the stage set for a monumental fight in the run-up to the 2007 election. When the election came round, it seemed that the perfect trifecta had formed. The inequalities in development became more and more difficult to ignore. The feelings of some communities that they had been excluded from the national agenda or outrightly subjugated by the government of the day was palpable. All that was needed to ignite the situation was a closely contested election. And when that came, the tinderbox was lit. The rest, as we say, is history, and unfortunately the start of one of the darkest moments in Kenya's independent era. When the dust had settled, Kenya thereafter was to experience its most profound constitutional moment yet. The fear of a return to violence created the much-needed environment for constitutional reforms that would transform the system of governance from that of a powerful central government to that of a devolved system of governance. The premise of the reforms was to find a way to guarantee equitable distribution of development across the entire country as a matter of right and not by dint of any political privilege. I am grateful to God for allowing me the opportunity to be the first president to implement Kenya's 2010 new constitution. However, that said, the years following the passage of this historic new constitution, the underlying issues around ethnic inclusion at the national level did not fade away. And the situation once again came to a head in 2017, almost 10 years to the month after the post-election violence of 2007. I, as head of state and government, was determined not to let history repeat itself. I had spent the last 2 years of my first term trying to make up for the lost time that had been wasted running back and forth from The Hague. My administration was therefore working double time to try and fulfill our election pledges and to allow us the option to seek a fresh mandate in 2017. The 2017 election proved to be yet another milestone moment in my political life. For the first time in Kenya's history, the outcome of a general election had been overturned by the courts. Whether on account of judicial activism or plain ignorance, the decision of the Supreme Court to overturn my August victory and order fresh elections was all that was needed to put the country on an extremely dangerous footing. The constitutional lacuna surrounding the lack of defined and codified rules of engagement for the operations of government in the event of such a repeat election exasperated the situation even further. As the country prepared to go back to the polls for a second time on October 26, 2017, the main opposition parties made the decision to boycott the polls, and whereas the victory of my party was all but assured, the victory came at a price. Once again, two communities had gotten their way yet again, and the much-touted tyranny of numbers had delivered another victory with staggering efficiency. Indeed, the intelligence reports in the days and weeks after the election and my subsequent inauguration pointed towards growing intercommunal and inter-ethnic unrest, more so in some hotspots, particularly in the mass urban settlements of Nairobi and in our lakeside region of our country. Our security services adopted a containment posture and did their best in preventing the situation from escalating. And as I was getting my daily updates, I was reassured that normalcy would be restored, and indeed it was. However, ladies and gentlemen, as it has been said by leaders across the world, peace is not informed purely by the absence of conflict. By the time Christmas of 2017 was approaching, it became clear to me that the calm that had returned to the country had been replaced by an inexplicable sadness and a tangible despondency that had seeped into the hearts and minds of large sections of our population. There were communities that felt defeated, that they had nothing more to lose, and that they no longer wanted to associate with a country known as Kenya because they felt that they had no stake in it. I was not the only one who sensed that there was more that bellied this uneasy calm, and that something serious and possibly more sinister was slowly brewing. The economy had not bounced back at the pace we had anticipated. Investors had adopted a wait-and-see attitude. And even though my coalition had an overwhelming majority in both houses of parliament, the politics seemed to be all wrong. And all this happening at a time when I was reconstituting my cabinet, putting in place the organization needed to deliver on the remainder of our pledges to the people of Kenya. And it was then that I was reminded about the inverse correlation between our election cycles and the country's economic performance. Whenever political temperatures went up, real GDP growth came down. The facts do not lie. In 1992, after the first multi-party elections since the lifting of the ban on political pluralism, real GDP growth contracted to 0.8% from 1.4% the previous year. In 1997, it dropped to 0.4%, down from the previous 4.5%. The same thing happened in 2008, when the economy virtually ground to a standstill. The long and short of it was that after every election from 1992, our country would take a hit for up to 2 years. Things would then settle, and shortly thereafter, we would be once again in campaign mood, and the vicious cycle would readily repeat itself. This meant that during every election cycle, thousands of jobs were lost, private investment and private sector confidence would shrink, and revenues to government would be strained, with adverse effects on our national development agenda. And it was then that I made possibly one of the most difficult decisions of my presidency. And I resolved two things. Firstly, that I would deliver on my development promise no matter what. And secondly, that I would not be the president that took Kenya back into any form of civil strife. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it was not weakness that led me to seek out the leader of the opposition at the time, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. It was the appreciation that it was not about him, but rather the people whom he represented. The millions who felt excluded and marginalized by our brand of politics and the imperfections of our democracy. The things that we discussed in the days that followed, and which culminated on the 9th of March 2018 in what we Kenyans commonly refer to as a handshake, are the subject of another lecture. Suffice it to say that on that day, our country, Kenya, exhaled a breath of fresh air and freedom. The dialogue that began was about what we needed to do to make Kenyans feel included in the affairs of their nation. It was about how we could strengthen devolution to deliver on what the framers of our Constitution had intended. It was about how to make every Kenyan, from large or small communities, feel like the government was theirs. We recognize that when stripped down to its most rudimentary form, Kenya was simply an amalgamation of different ethnic communities trying to coexist peacefully within the borders that we found ourselves in. We recognize that for Kenya to endure as an indivisible nation, a winner-takes-all situation was not sustainable over the long term, and that the structures and organization of government would need to rethink to accommodate the realities of who we really were deep down. We concluded that ethnic bigotry was a convenient cover for the vice of corruption, because it was always easy to say that it was our turn to eat, and whatever we were doing for the sake of our people. Even as the country sighed in relief after the handshake, the weight did not lift from my shoulders, for I now had the arduous task of taking and carrying along with me on this journey those who had benefited from the previous status quo. That, my dear friends, was easier said than done. Many of those from my political strongholds could not comprehend why any political concessions needed to be made to those from other political parties, more so because many of the proposals meant that the tyranny of numbers wielded by the larger communities would no longer be an assured path to absolute power. They would have to contend with a seat at a much bigger table alongside many more people. The hardliners in my camp would remain skeptical and would take any bump along the way as an excuse to tell me to initiate a course correction. I would ask them, where do you want us to go? Do you want our brothers and sisters back on the streets? Do we want to go back to tear gas and rubber bullets to be our only tools of persuasion? This I flatly rejected, and I said, and I took pleasure thereafter in reading intelligence reports that talked about other issues and not simmering ethnic tension. Contrary to the general expectation at the time, I did not dissolve government. I did not initiate the formation of a government of national unity. Both Raila and I knew that the issues we were discussing were too deeply rooted in our people's psyche to be resolved by some simplistic cosmetic touch-ups. After all, as they say, a pig with lipstick is still a pig. To some on both sides of the divide, the handshake was an inconvenient occurrence in the succession arithmetic. However, for me, it was the beginning of righting many wrongs that had been committed since our independence. Wrongs that had led to lopsided development and a concentration of power, wealth, and opportunity in the hands of a few at the expense of the development of many. I can see my brother here is also concerned about my development. Thank you very much. My decision to pursue an agenda of inclusivity bore fruits in many ways. In the period from 2018 up to 2022, Kenya recorded some of its fastest development gains. It was the togetherness of the Kenyan people that allowed my administration to steer the country through the difficulties of COVID-19 that ravaged both lives and livelihoods. It was the unity of purpose that allowed Kenya to play its rightful role in the international stage by securing a non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council and playing host to a multitude of international events. In 2022, it was this unity and sense of inclusion that allowed us to experience one of Kenya's most peaceful general elections, while closing the year strong economically at a real GDP growth rate of 4.8%. On the 6th of September 2022, I handed over the reins of leadership to my successor, President William Ruto, in a colorful and peaceful ceremony. It was a proud moment for me and for Kenya. No matter what was felt about the outcome of the elections, we stayed true to our constitution. Although I completed my term in office, having not realized to my full satisfaction the agenda of de-risking Kenya's governance structures for the benefit of future generations, I remain committed to the cause because I feel that when we embrace inclusion, consultation, and consensus building in our politics, it only serves to improve the lives of our citizens. It is said that a day in politics is a very long time, and that politics remains the art of the possible. As I today settle into my retirement and shift my focus, time, and energy towards the peaceful resolution of conflicts on our continent, I remain alive to the fact that I must continue to play a part in fostering peace in my home country of Kenya. I use my voice and my platform to persuade, especially those in power, that a dialogue with those in opposition to their victory is not a weakness, nor is it a denial of their victory, but rather a much-needed tool that creates a more inclusive Kenya and that sets a forward developmental trajectory. A trajectory that meets the expectations of all in our society. And I remind that the mentality of winner takes it all can only result in division and retardation of our national development agenda. Therefore, dear friends, as you celebrate victory of an election and prepare to inaugurate a new president, remember that your victory is not just about numbers, as Western democracies would have us believe, but that the real victory will be how you will reach out to all the voices in Nigeria and how every Nigerian, from Katsina in the north to Port Harcourt in the south, from Bambana in the west to Maiduguri in the east, how they will all feel included in your victory and see your government as their government, your agenda as their agenda, one Nigeria, one government for all. And if I may address His Excellency the President-elect, President Tinubu, through you, Your Excellency Vice President-elect, I speak to you as a brother, but also as an elder statesman in leadership. The contest is now over, and the hard work of building a prosperous and unified Nigeria now begins. Upon assuming the office of President, you would be wise to transcend from the tactical politics of an election and assume your role as Nigeria's vision bearer. This will demand a complete overhaul of the adversarial mindset that we as politicians are conditioned to embrace during the electoral process. As President, you must learn very quickly to lead those who love you and those who loathe you with equal passion and commitment, because you are now the father of all. Your Excellency, when countries are in election mode, the people and its leaders are more divided than ever and boxed into their various sectarian and partisan interests. However, when you are the head of state and you take command of the country's armed forces, you become the embodiment of the sum total of the many different ethnic groups, religions that make up your country, and you become the symbol of unity. Indeed, you become the face of Nigeria. I encourage you to surround yourself with the voices of those who will counterbalance the hardliners that feel entitled to a piece of your office. You will lose nothing and gain everything by reaching out across the political, ethnic, and religious lines to those who may feel aggrieved by your victory in one way or another. Please allow them to exhale and be part of your vision for a greater Nigeria. It is my hope and my prayer that the lessons from across the continent will give you the resolve to walk the difficult path of overcoming those three enemies I started by mentioning, the three enemies of nationhood: negative ethnicity, religious discrimination, and corruption. As your fellow African, I look forward to a Nigeria that emerges from this transition ready to flex and fight for its rightful place on the global stage with both hands at the ready. Your Excellency, President Buhari, I once again thank you for your leadership. I thank you for your friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all very kindly for your attention. May God bless you all. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria and her people, and may God bless Africa. Thank you very much.
Former President of Kenya there, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who just shared his valuable perspective on deepening democracy for development when using his vast experience when he led Kenya, to give pertinent views on national unity and strengthening democracy as a catalyst for development, using Kenya as a case study. A reawakening for nations on the continent, he says, on their choices in the democratic journeys they have embarked on, while challenging Nigeria to see the beauty in her diversity as a pillar to continue to stand firm as a formidable nation and one that is prosperous.
of inclusion, the issue of vision bearing, and what needs to be brought to the table. Analytical and incisive. A truly worthy speaker, a respected statesman. We thank you, Your Excellency Asante Sana. Thank you so very much indeed. It's time now to bring forward speakers who will bring different perspectives. And it's time to invite Mr. Cyril Stober to do the honors. Cyril?
Thank you, Eugenia. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in a moment, we'll be listening to a contribution titled Religious Tolerance and Inclusiveness. Let me take a moment to talk about the contributor. His Eminence Muhammad Saad Abubakar, CFR, MNI, is the 20th Sultan of Sokoto and President General of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, ascending the throne of his forebears some 17 years ago. This foremost traditional ruler was a career military officer and rose to the rank of a one-star general before answering the call to mount the exalted throne of both the head of the Sokoto Caliphate and spiritual head of Muslims in Nigeria. He served as defense attaché of the Nigerian High Commission to Pakistan with concurrent accreditation to Iraq, the Gulf states, and Saudi Arabia. His clear display of intense patriotism and passion for Nigeria's development saw him attending the senior executive course at the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, in 2006. Presently, he serves as co-chair of the Nigeria Interreligious Council, a body established to provide religious and traditional leaders with a platform to contribute to national cohesion and promote greater interaction, as well as better understanding among the leaders and their followers in the country. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I now respectfully invite His Eminence Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, CFR, Sultan of Sokoto, to deliver his paper. Your Eminence.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على النبي الكريم. Your Excellency, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, who is living in a couple of hours on a very, very high note and much healthier and looking much fresher despite all the odds and the tension. The Vice President-elect, Hashim Shettima, GCON, our own dear, very dear brother, the former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, whose last sentences or words were those of a very, very patriotic Nigerian. We thank you for your comments, and we believe those who have ears must have heard you very, very clearly. I must recognize my co-contributors to this inaugural lecture, and of course, the owner of Ife, my own very dear brother, the co-chair of the National Council of Traditional Rulers, and other distinguished leaders of this our great country. I greet you all in the best form of greeting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've just had a very, very interesting topic given to us by highly experienced and respected elder statesmen in our great continent, Africa, and the world. When you are called to speak after such a very eloquent lecture telling us what his experiences have been and are still going on in his dear country and Africa, and given the topic to speak on religious tolerance and inclusiveness, and also knowing and taking note that yesterday at the National Mosque we had a lecture which captured all the ingredients, or most of the ingredients, of religious tolerance and inclusiveness. I believe I shouldn't be saying much on that religious tolerance. Tolerance is what we have been working on the last 16 years as co-chairman of NAREC, together with the president of CAN, and I believe the SGF in the last 5, 6, 7 years had been the anchor and the arrowhead of our activities, so he knows a lot, and the government too knows a lot about our works for religious tolerance and understanding in this great country, Nigeria. So I will deviate a little bit, but not too off, because most of the things I'm going to say, if you put them together with what the former president of Kenya said, you'll find a lot of similarities. So I crave your indulgence to patiently listen in the next 8, 9, 10 minutes of Vice President, even though I was given 15 minutes. We all know why we have democracy. And we call democracy a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And such democracy we are supposed to practice or to have is to ensure development, peace and stability of our people. And without development, without peace and stability, there's no democracy. And you can't have democracy when you don't have good leaders to practice that democracy. So leadership is of utmost importance if you want to really practice democracy, move the country forward to the greatest heights. So I'll briefly talk about some of the things that I'm so very familiar with, what leadership is all about, because there's need for us to look at what we should do. I'll skip a lot of sentences or comments that people might not understand. But I want to start by expressing our deep gratitude to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, for making it possible to witness the 7th consecutive democratic transition of power in our great country, Nigeria, without any major hitch or crisis. This in itself is a significant achievement in which both the winners and those who did not win, I don't call them losers, those who won and those who did not win share in the credit. The lecture from our distinguished speaker has been well conceived and delivered, and I believe we've all heard him. Our task here is to see how we can enrich the conversation by broadening the perspectives and propounding advice to the incoming administration of our great country on ways to improve on governance and development in an atmosphere of peace and security. Coming from a tradition of good governance that is informed by an intellectual tradition, which itself is an heir of a long tradition of governance going back to the empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, perhaps my contribution should dwell on the writings of our forefathers who established the Sokoto Caliphate over 200 years ago. Being scholars, these leaders have left behind over 350 different works between the three prominent figures. I will just provide some few snippets to take us through this short presentation. On the necessity of government, for example, Sultan Muhammad Bello said, "It is certainly known that if it were not for the power of rulers, no person would have been safe in his house, let alone in the wilderness. Nor would it be permissible for any person to collect tax, and the interest of the public would not have been preserved. For this reason, it becomes necessary to appoint a supreme leader and his deputies, such as the prime ministers, the governors, and the judges of all the regions of the earth, so that the interest of religion and leadership may be maintained and the proper order of the entire world be established. If it were not for the authority of state, many people would have been killed before they could kill a single man who is legally condemned to death when they seek to obtain their rights from each other without a force to protect them. Rulers in our case are those who have been elected to govern us, govern our country or our states at both the federal and state levels, should see leadership as a trust from God, for which they have to ultimately account to Him, as Sheikh Abdullah bin Fodio said. Verily, political power is a vicegerency from Allah and a stewardship from God's apostle. How great then its dignity and how heavy are its burdens. If the leader follows the path of righteousness, piety will take ascendancy over his worldly desires. If he goes astray, his piety will fall victim to worldly lust. Therefore, fear God. Know that every soul shall have a taste of death, and you shall receive your full recompense on the day of judgment. Leadership is also service to the people. As Sheikh Uthman Fodio said, seeing to the welfare of people is more effective than the use of force. It has been said that the crown of a leader is his integrity, his stronghold is his impartiality, and his wealth is that of his people. There will be no triumph with transgression, no rule without learning, and no leadership with vengeance. No society can rise above its leaders. In other words, it is the quality of leaders which determines and pegs the quality of society. As Dr. Muhammad Bello said, leaders are like a spring of water, and all our officials are like water wheels. If the spring is pure, the filth in the water wheels cannot harm it. If, on the other hand, the spring is polluted and dirty, the purity of the water wheels that have been used to draw the water will have little or no effect on the purity of the water. Leaders still need to be very careful in the appointment of officials, and Sheikh Uthman bin Fodio said, the first support is on upright wazir, that is a prime minister or a deputy over the state, who wakes him, the leader, who wakes him up if he sleeps, give him sight if he cannot see, and remind him if he forgets. The greatest catastrophe which can befall leaders and people is to be deprived of good wazirs or ministers and good assistances. The most important qualifying attitude or attribute of the leader of the wazir is to be of trustworthy conduct, perceptive in the affairs of the common people, the courage to tell the truth, and must not withhold good advice from the leader. Muhammad Bello has a piece of advice to these officials. In his usul says, in one of his very famous books, where he wrote, "The happiest leader is he whose subjects are happy with him, and the most unfortunate leader is he whose subjects are miserable under him. So beware of injustice, for your workers are imitating you. If you commit injustice, you will be like the animal in a green pasture, which eats so much that it becomes so fat, and that fatness is the cause of its destruction, as it will be slaughtered and eaten," unquote. Leaders need to understand those things that are necessary for a state to survive, and those that are capable of destroying polities. On this, Sheikh Uthman Danfodio wrote, "One of the swiftest ways of destroying a state is to give preference to one particular tribe over another, or to show favor to one group of people over the other, and draw near those who should be kept away, and keep away those who should be drawn near you." A ruler was asked when he had lost his throne, what brought your rule to an end? He replied, "Being intransigent in my views and neglecting to seek advice." Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the few remarks I want to make to draw attention of our incoming governors, presidents, and other leaders on the intellectual heritage which we have been talking about for decades, or for centuries rather, which I hope our elected officials will reflect on and find useful as they undertake the onerous task of children with the affairs of the state. I should also draw your attention to levels of poverty and ignorance in the land, and ignorance in the land only made worse by the rising population of this country, which is estimated by the United Nations to be well over 400 million by 2050, which will make Nigeria the third largest populated country in the world after India and China. As political leaders, you need not only think of the next election, but also, and more importantly, think of the next generation. I leave you with these thoughts and pray for God's guidance, wisdom, and patience for our leaders to take our country to the highest height, and may we have peace and stability in our great country, Nigeria. And as we wish our incoming government most of the Allah's blessings in all what they do to take our country to the promised land, we call on all and all to give support, prayer, and stay in peace. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of our leaders for what they have done for our country, and may He bring peace and stability. As I also leave you in peace, I say, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
His Eminence Mohammed Saad Abubakar III, CFR, Sultan of Sokoto, speaking there. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, now with a different perspective on the same topic, religious tolerance and inclusiveness, is the contribution of Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, a religious cleric of repute, an author of distinction, an irrepressible social critic, and an unrepentant advocate of social justice, equity, and a better society at home and worldwide. Matthew Hassan Kuka served as a member of Nigeria's Truth Commission, Secretary of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, member of Nigeria Electoral Reform Committee, and also a member of the National Peace Committee. A Kennedy School of Government master's degree holder in public policy, he also holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. Matthew Hassan Kuka is currently the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite my Lord Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka.
Your Excellencies, Mr. President and the Vice President and our brother, friend, the former President of Kenya, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that many of you may already be nervous as to what Bishop Kuka is going to say. I feel like Miriam Makeba, the late Miriam Makeba. She said that every time I stand up to speak, they will say, here comes the troublemaker. But President Uhuru Kenyatta, I really want to thank you. I mean, your most eloquent speech struck a chord. And had I received a copy of your speech earlier, I think that even that alone should have broadened the scope of our conversation. As you can see, the Sultan and I are different. He's taller than me. He has a much more regal appearance. And he's spoken to you about the caliphate and its wonderful values. I'm a citizen of Nigeria living in Sokoto, but I'll come from a slightly different perspective, from the point of view of constitutionalism and constitutional governance and how all this fit into religion. Because I think the temptation for many of us is to assume that somehow religion is a problem. And I think the former president's speech made the point very clear that religion, just like any other form of identity, whether it's ethnicity, religion, gender, the real problem is when these categories are left unattended to. It is then that they provoke problems. So I really think that we must appreciate the fact that all the values and the temptations, the trials that the people of Kenya have gone through. In summary, what struck me very powerfully was the idea of the tyranny of numbers, the tyranny of victory. And if I may add, the arrogance and the triumphalism that tends to characterize victory, and how dangerous all these are. Because numbers are important, but they're only important up to a point. And the real challenge is what you do and how you aggregate these numbers for national development. And I think Nigeria and Africa in general must wake up to the threat that is posed by the emergence of what you call illiberal democracy. 20 years ago, this word was not talked about, but now it is in the vocabulary of political science, that there is a resurgence of democracies that look like democracies but don't work like democracies. They conduct elections, they have judiciaries, they have political parties, but in the final analysis, they are a halfway house between the values of democracy and dictatorship and tyranny. And I think that the guest speaker has given us all the ingredients we require to be able to walk through the challenges. And I saw the Vice President-elect smiling. He's somebody I already know, and I appreciate the depth of his intellect and his capacity to process a lot of the issues that are on the table. There are many people, including Christians, who will be disappointed that Bishop Kuka is standing here, because there's been a lot has been made out of the fact that we are dealing with a Muslim set of people who have won the elections. What are the implications of this for Nigeria? And of course, with one side of our mouth, we also say as Nigerians that we want people to be able to govern us, who love us, who cherish us, and who understand the principles of the management of diversity. Now, we will not be nervous, and we really should not be nervous about the future. Not only because it is in the hands of God, but I think that the greatest value, and I hope that this lecture that has been delivered by Uhuru Kenyatta, although unfortunately, sir, you've been in Nigeria twice, but we are not yet Uhuru. We are aspiring. We're not yet Uhuru yet. But I hope that it provides the incoming government with the texture, the material that it requires, because how to build a good society is not a complicated thing. It is not a complicated thing. And the principles and the question, because one of the things that SGF said to me was also the fact that we'll be talking about the fact that as Nigerians, we are better together. Everybody knows that we are better together. But the first question to ask is, who are we? After 9/11, the American political scientists were asking the question, who are we? Because there was a problem in terms of who people are. And I think if you live in Nigeria, all of us know. And this is why those who listen to me will attest to the fact that I don't like to talk about religion, in part because I don't believe there is a religious problem. But somehow the Western media, the Nigerian media, and the political elite have assumed the fact that there is something between religions and that there is a conflict between religions. There is absolutely no conflict, between religions. I say to people, assuming, for example, we all have knives in our houses. Assuming you come back from work and your wife is in the kitchen, and she comes to welcome you with a knife in her back with which she's been slicing onions, you will have no problem entering the house. But if you had a fight with your wife before you left the house, and your husband comes back and knocks on the door, and you see your wife with a knife, you will pull back. So knives by themselves are not a problem. It's what you do with them. In the same way that, identities are not a problem. Identities are not a problem. It's how you activate those identities and what you do with them. Now, will I be walking around Nigeria and people say to me, we worry about you being in Sokoto, and when I speak, I can tell a million stories. And I give you an example. What happened in Sokoto? With the tragic story of Deborah, I had gone for a burial of the father of one of my priests, and I was on my way back in a car when I got a call to say that one of my priests called me to say, look, this is what is happening. And I got to Abuja, and I got telephone calls from everywhere. Where are you? I said, I'm in Abuja. He said, I hope you remain in Abuja. I hope you're not going back to Sokoto anytime soon. My family members who called me, I said, so what am I supposed to do? No, remain in Abuja. Some people say, leave the country. And I said, to go where? And people could not understand. When I had to go back to Sokoto the next day, people said to me, I had to just tell my friend, where are you? I told them I'm in Abuja. But when I got to Sokoto, I walked to my house. And for me, it's a very powerful image. As I entered my house, just as I got to the gate, I saw an armored tank, soldiers, their numbers, guarding my house. And I was touched. I came out of the vehicles and I greeted all the soldiers. I shook all of them. But I saw from their faces, they looked to me very much like Fulani people. The soldiers who were guarding my house. By their height and so on. So when I went in, then later in the evening, I came back and I started talking to them. There were about 12 or 14 of them. First of all, I looked at them with all their equipment that they're in my house. After we greeted, I went back. At about 6:30 to 7, I came out, stood by my balcony. And I saw all of them done their ablution. They are preparing for their salah. And they prayed in my house. I'm looking at them. And this is Sokoto I'm supposed to be running away from. And here are these people, they are Muslims, they are Nigerians, they are here to protect me. Nigeria is a complex country of great possibilities, great contradictions, about which we will not be in this crisis. Managing diversity is a science. The World Bank knows this. My brother, Dr. Akunyumi, is here. He's going to talk about all this. They understand. And no country, no business, no family, no organization has a future if you don't figure out how to manage diversity. I want to conclude by saying religion has been turned into a weapon, and it's a weapon of choice for politics and politicians. The danger and the challenge for us as religious leaders, because the Conservative Party in England, because the British government was a theocratic state, so to say, and the Conservative Party was literally part of the Anglican Church. And the joke used to be that the Anglican Church is the Conservative Party at prayer. The danger with being captured by politicians is that religious leaders, and I tell people, when people talk about Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, Atiku, Peter Obi, and all of these people. I work with the vice president-elect. I served for 6 years or so in Atiku's university. Peter Obi is my very close friend of very many years. And I'm a Nigerian and I can work with anybody. And we must get to that point in which we have enough trust in ourselves. So religion in Nigeria, the section 10 of the Constitution talks about the fact that the state should not adopt religion as a state religion. But we know that the reality is completely different. So the challenge for us going forward is to address the issue. What is the meeting point between religion and politics? For us as Christians and as Muslims, we must understand we are first of all citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria who just happen to be Christians or Muslim. We could be anything else. And our inability to appreciate those differences also is directly related to the way the political class has continued to treat us. Let me put it that way. Because if you are not able to manage diversity well, people have gotten out their pens and their pencils. When you call out ministers, everybody is looking at who is from my village, who is from my town. Because, no thanks, we have come to associate opportunity, privilege with having your own person in power. It's not the way to go, but the reality has led us otherwise. So I want to say that first of all, Nigeria must heal. Nigeria must heal. But we also must have the courage to identify the scars, the wounds, the injuries. The worst thing that can happen to us is to pretend that everything is okay, because everything is not okay. We have so many of our citizens who have lost their lives. We have so many of our citizens who are still in captivity. Managing diversity and managing differences is not about religious leaders talking together. It is about whether the state can create the kind of infrastructure, the guardrails, that can help Nigerians move as citizens of their country. But right now, there is how people feel because they are Christians or Muslims. There is how people feel because they are women. The levels and categories of exclusion are so tremendous and so immense. So I hope that going forward, the things that the guest speaker has spoken about most eloquently, that is, how do you manage victory? How do you manage victory? How do you mutate from being a politician who was contesting election to being a politician who has won elections? Very often, and what is clear to us in Africa, why religion, why ethnicity, why all these things continue to injure our countries, is largely because we have not come to terms with the fact that power is just about, as somebody said, our turn to eat. Michaela Wrong's book, I know Michaela pretty well. She autographed a copy of her book. But her arguments were most eloquent because her arguments were largely, if the Kalenjin did very well under Arab Moi, and if your dad and Mwai Kibaki and other people who are, if they've done well, it was almost natural that the man contesting for election against you will say, it is our own turn to eat. And we can see what power has been. Therefore, it is our turn to continue with the things that other people have done, privilege their community, privilege their... So we cannot grow a country like this. We will remain volatile. And as you see on a racetrack, everybody stands or kneels differently. There is no advantage. The locations may be different. But when the gun is fired, the man who is right closer to the inner part of the ring is a little bit away. We don't expect that all of us will finish, but let us create an environment in which all of us can compete. And we will win according to our energy and our speed. I used to have a parishioner, and she came to me and she was complaining. You know, when the WAEC, that is the local school examination, when they are over, most people will come to you and they say, my son passed WAEC. But if they don't pass, they say, WAEC failed my son. So the challenge for us in Nigeria is to create a condition, a situation in which all of us can compete. We will never win the same prize. But let there be, as His Eminence the Sultan said, let loss of elections not be a punitive, because the problem with Africa, when you lose the elections, you don't get a chance to get back in. When you lose the elections, you can tell, you can lose your life. But it also means that there will be no road to your village, that there will be no water. And Africa African politics must remain and will remain violent unless and until we find an equilibrium in which, one, we are citizens of a country. My constitution allows me the right to stop being a Catholic or to stop being a Christian today. His Eminence always jokes with me. He says to me, they sent you to Sokoto so that we can convert you and make you a Muslim. And the constitution allows that. But I also let him know that I'm looking forward to the day that I will also either baptize him. But we can talk about that. But the challenge for those, and I want to end by saying, right now, 133 million Nigerians are suffering from various levels of multidimensional poverty. Okay? I have not turned the light and seen a part where Muslims are living that they have light. I've not seen a part of the country where Muslims are eating and the rest of us are not eating. So we must come to terms with the fact that we are not bleeding, we are not suffering because we are Christians or Muslims, but we are in a country that is malfunctioning. How to make that country work for the rich, for the poor, for the aged, and for everybody is a challenge. It's not a challenge that everybody can win, but I think it's a challenge that a government that appreciates it doesn't have all the answers must come to terms with the fact that there is a way of looking for and finding answers. I would like to just end by saying, and I make the point very clearly, it is in the struggle with the problems of Nigeria, I remain exceptionally optimistic. I travel the world. People say to me afterwards, where do you find this courage to say that Nigeria is working? When you say, okay, it may not be working, but this is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And I'm not being flippant. When I went to the United States of America to study, I preached in a church. The parish priest called me and said, listen, you speak with such eloquence. I'd like you, we'll get you a green card. You can settle here in America. And I looked at him. I said, this God is a wonderful God. You are giving me a green card. My passport is actually a green passport. So what am I doing with a green card? So the young Nigerians who are living in our country, I always say to them, no, I'm not worried. Really, I'm not worried. Let them go. It's for the good of the country. The challenge for us as Africans is to think the way the Asians have thought. That is, you go to Europe, you go to America with a purpose. But that purpose means coming back to develop your country. But it also means that that country must create an environment in which you can feel confident to come and present the gift that God has given you. I have two young men. They're in America. They just finished from a prestigious university. I said, when are you coming home? They said, Bishop, coming home to do what? I said, no, coming home to... He said, we don't have an uncle who is a senator. We don't have anybody in government. What are we coming to Nigeria to do? So, Mr. Vice President-elect, the challenge for you is to make this country believable, livable, credible, so that all of us together can stand in one tent and build a great nation. Once again, Secretary to Government, I want to thank you and thank the organizers for inviting me. God bless you and God bless our country.
His Lordship, Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Kuka, Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, who just spoke on religious tolerance and inclusiveness. Of course, we know that Bishop Kuka is renowned for his work in promoting interfaith dialogue. He shared insights on fostering religious harmony and inclusivity as vital tools of Nigeria's democratic growth, painting a picture on the true essence, on the dividends of democracy, which is hinged on peace, stability, and progress, while calling on Nigerians to look beyond our differences and embrace one another by managing our diversity, working together to build the Nigeria of our dreams. If you're just joining us, this is the 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture.
Listening to the message, Amina J. Mohammed GCON, who served as advisor to 4 successive presidents of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on poverty, public sector reform, and sustainable development. She also served as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She is presently the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Groups. She served on numerous international advisory boards, including the UN Secretary General's High-Level Panel on Post-2015 Development Agenda, as well as chaired the advisory board of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO Global Monitoring Report on Education. She is a recipient of various global awards. I invite you to now listen to the message of Dr. Amina Mohammed, GCON, on security and development.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real honor to address you today on this momentous occasion as we gather to celebrate the inauguration of President-elect His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to the government and to the people of Nigeria for yet another peaceful transition of power. This is a testament to the consolidation of democracy, peace, stability, and development in our great nation. I would also like to extend my congratulations to all the newly elected and re-elected officials. May you be guided by clarity of thought and unwavering determination to serve our people with the utmost dedication. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are at an inflection point. Our world is facing a series of interlocking threats, security challenges, and cascading crises in food, energy, and finance that are magnified by the growing impacts of climate change. 1/4 of humanity resides in conflict-affected areas, and as of mid-2022, over 100 million individuals have been forcibly displaced worldwide. The devastating effects of violence have not only impacted those directly involved in armed conflicts, but have reverberated throughout societies. And in our modern era, incidents involving malicious uses of digital technologies by state and non-state actors pose unique challenges and threats, impacting our security landscape and the well-being of individuals and nations. We are witnessing a rising tide of inequalities in finance, trade and technology, both within and among nations. And the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated income inequality on a global and local scale, widening the gap between nations and societies. Moreover, our continent is disproportionately bearing the brunt of a climate crisis it did not create. The unequal suffering resulting from the effects of climate change represents one of the most profound injustices in our world today. And Nigeria itself faces a myriad of security challenges across various regions. Intercommunal tensions, farmer-herder conflicts, organized armed conflict and terrorism continue to threaten the northern and middle belt regions, while separatist agitation and the militancy menace in the southeast and south-south are a challenge. These security challenges impede progress and development in various sectors, and I commend the government of Nigeria and its armed forces for its national and sub-regional efforts to address these complex challenges. This is a moment for us to come together, united in our determination to address these multifaceted challenges. We must find local solutions to our national problems. We must foster international cooperation and Nigerian leadership, strengthen our collective resolve and embark on a pathway that champions inclusivity, equity, and sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, sustainable development stands as humanity's most effective tool for prevention. It is the only way to address the underlying drivers of conflict and fragility. This is the security development nexus in action. In practice, this means inclusive, people-centered development solutions that address grievances, consolidate peace dividends, and build resilient communities where justice and dignity are our watchwords. It means leaving no one behind. It means delivering more under the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, and the African Union's Agenda 2063, which provide a framing for investing in the nexus. By creating decent jobs, particularly for youth and women, we empower individuals to live dignified lives and reduce the risk of social unrest and strengthen social cohesion. By bridging the digital divide and investing in new technology, we enable connectivity, drive economic growth, and create new possibilities for working together. Infrastructure development implemented with a conflict-sensitive approach, will open up new opportunities for cooperation and foster the type of subnational integration that enhances economic empowerment against unexpected shocks. And by transforming our education system, we can equip future generations to fully participate in modern economies and to meet the demands of our fast-changing nation and world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to propose 4 key elements which can catalyze accelerated sustainable development that addresses the underlying drivers of insecurity when they are present together. First, we need a strong policy environment that transcends disciplines. This means policies that integrate all sectors, from security to humanitarian to development. It means designing measures that address the more profound structural causes of insecurity while also meeting urgent humanitarian needs and remaining acutely mindful of ongoing conflict dynamics. Investing in local economies across food security, energy access, and digital connectivity is key. Second, we need strong institutions. This means institutions that are built to last, ensure the rule of law, and provide a framework for a just and equitable society. Institutions that create an environment where citizens' rights are protected and deliver essential services to the people, such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and social welfare. This means partnerships, collaboration and joint planning across all levels of government. Local and state governments are essential players in this regard, given their closeness to the people and their constitutional responsibilities. Third, people. We must invest in our people, and our leaders at all levels, government, community, business, traditional fathers, must all be at the table. A transformational education sector will also be crucial. The knowledge and skill sets needed for nation building must continue to evolve at pace. This includes women and youth. 70% of Nigerians are under 30. Girls under 30 alone comprise nearly 1/3 of the total population. Women and youth bear the most significant toll from conflict, yet they're rarely given a seat at the mediation table. This is despite the fact that we know from experience and from independent research that pathways to peace are always more successful when they involve women and young people. Finally, these 3 elements, policies, institutions, and people, are only effective if combined with sound investments and accountability mechanisms. Recourse to justice, effective criminal justice systems, and transparent governance of resources are all required for sustainable development to meaningfully address the root causes of violence. Sustainable development will never address the root causes of violence without recourse to justice. And for this, we must invest in people and supplies that deliver on the rule of law. In the words of Secretary General Guterres, from the smallest village to the global stage, the rule of law is all that stands between peace and stability. SDG 16 is our compass in this regard, and its fulfillment has ripple effects throughout all SDGs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the existential threats of our time, from climate change to the threat of nuclear conflict, underscore the importance of multilateralism. No one nation can defend itself against these threats entirely on its own. Nations working together can achieve things that are beyond what even the most powerful state can accomplish itself. And that is why the United Nations was created. It is what we do. Convene for peace and give hope in times of cascading crises. The United Nations needs Nigeria and strong African voices to rise up, speak on the global stage, and double down on the multilateral solutions that meet the immense challenges of our time. The global narrative must be one that is shaped by all of us and not just by a few. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the latest peaceful democratic transition of power is yet more proof that Nigeria is better together. Our deepening democracy is consolidating the foundations of a prosperous future together. Your responsibility as leaders of this great nation is to continue this trajectory and to guide the people of Nigeria along inclusive pathways of peace and development that leave absolutely no one behind. It is time to be humbled by the weight of this responsibility for over 220 million Nigerians. And we at the United Nations are committed to helping you achieve a peaceful and prosperous Nigeria where all Nigerians will thrive. I thank you.
Your Excellencies, Aminaji Mohammed, GCON, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and Chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Groups, delivering a message there. The Nigerian economy comes into focus as we take on the next contribution. This is strengthening the Nigerian economy. A contributor who will speak to the issues is no other than Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, a former minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and presently the president of the African Development Bank Group, where he is currently serving his second term. Under his tenure, Dr. Adesina introduced innovations that made the African Development Bank Group achieve the highest capital increase since its inception in 1964. Dr. Adesina has been honored with several awards, and in 2017 he was conferred with the World Food Prize, also known as the Nobel Prize for Agriculture. Dr. Adesina was also announced as the winner of the 2020 Distinguished Fellowship Award by the Academy of Public Health, the flagship body of the West African Institute of Public Health, in December 2020. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President, African Development Bank, AFDB, strengthening the Nigerian economy.
Your Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, I also call him a father as well. Your Excellency, the President-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Your Excellency, the Vice President-elect, my dear brother, Excellency Shetima, Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, he and I have known each other forever, former President of the Republic of Kenya, the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, my dear brother, Boss Mustafa, and thank you for all you did to get me here. I finished the annual meetings of the African Development Bank, Mr. President, yesterday at about midnight, and I had to get on the flight to be here this morning. That's why I came in late here. Thank you very much, Secretary. Excellencies, Governors, Your Eminence, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends of Nigeria, beloved Nigerians. I wish to start by thanking you, Mr. President, for inviting me to the ceremonies for the swearing in of the incoming President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, for this achievement of the 7th democratic transition of our beloved country. I would like to congratulate the incoming President and also the incoming Vice President. I wish to thank the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, the Chairman and members of the Presidential Transition Council for inviting me to speak at this inauguration lecture for the incoming President of Nigeria. It is such a great honor to share my views and perspectives after the wonderful speech that has been given by my very dear friend and brother, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, as our nation gets ready to have a passing of the baton between His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari and the incoming President, His Excellency Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu. It is your turn. I wish to congratulate you, Mr. President, for your stewardship against difficulties of our nation for the past 8 years. And thank you most sincerely, Mr. President, for your support for me as President of the African Development Bank. People say great things about what, by God's grace, we've been able to achieve. But unless I was sent on a mission and supported on that mission, it would not have been possible. I'd like to thank you, Mr. President, because without your support in 2015, and you're standing beside me and behind me in the rough times of 2020, I will not be President of the African Development Bank. Mr. President, I was brought up as a kid to always go back to their elders and thank them. And we always say that the person who sent you on an errand is the person you go back to thank and give the report back to. And so I'll just say two things as I thank you, because I will not have another opportunity to thank you. The African Development Bank, Mr. President, was ranked this year as the most transparent financial institution in the world. And last year, Your Excellency, Mr. President, the African Development Bank was ranked as the best multilateral financial institution in the world. And so as you take leave as President, please accept my deepest gratitude, because without your support, I wouldn't have been there. And I want to thank you so much that you can take pride in these achievements as you go. And my dear brother, Bishop Kuka, was talking about Nigerian. I am proudly Nigerian. I will live as a Nigerian. I'll die as a Nigerian. And I'll ask God for permission on Resurrection Day if I might just hold a green, white, green flag in my hand, and that would be great. I would like to congratulate the incoming president, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, who will take over the mantle of leadership from Nigeria from you. I'm delighted that my very dear friend, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of Kenya, was invited to deliver the inauguration lecture. He is a great leader, not only in Kenya, a great leader for Africa. And I'm sure you must be wondering, there are actually two Kenyans that are actually here on this panel. Well, I lived in Kenya for many, many years, 10 years in Kenya. And I remember one day, President Goodluck Jonathan took me on a mission to Kenya, and we went to see President Uhuru Kenyatta. And as the two presidents were introducing members of their delegations, President Jonathan said to President Uhuru Kenyatta, "Here is Dr. Adeshina, Minister of Agriculture," to which President Kenyatta responded, "Yes, Adeshina is the Kenyan on loan to Nigeria." We all laughed. Thank you, Mr. President Kenyatta, for what an incredibly powerful speech you gave us today. Very, very insightful. Your Excellencies, the election of a new president always elicits hope. Nigeria will be looking to you as President Tinubu and Vice President Shettima on your first day in office with hope. Hope that you will assure security, peace, and stability. Hope that you will heal and unite a fractious nation. Hope that you will rise above party lines and forge a compelling force to move the nation forward with inclusiveness, fairness, equity, and justice. Hope that you will dramatically improve the economy, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And hope that you will spark a new wave of prosperity. And hope must be brought to the present, as hope deferred makes the heart grow weary. Your Excellencies, the starting point must be macroeconomic and fiscal stability. Unless the economy is revived and the fiscal challenges addressed boldly, the resources to develop will not be there. No bird can fly if its wings are tied. Nigeria currently faces huge fiscal deficits, estimated at 6% of the GDP. This has been due to several challenges, including low receipts to dwindling revenues from export of crude oil, vandalism of pipelines, and illegal bunkering of crude oil. According to Nigeria's Debt Management Office, Nigeria now spends 96% of its revenue servicing debt, with the debt-to-revenue ratio rising from 83.2% in 2021 to 96.3% by 2022. Some will argue that the debt-to-GDP ratio at 34% is still low compared to other countries in Africa. And that is absolutely correct. But no one pays their debt using GDP. Debt is paid using revenue, and Nigeria's revenues have been declining. Nigeria earns revenue today to service debt and not to grow. The place to start, therefore, is to remove the inefficient fuel subsidies. Nigerian fuel subsidies benefit the rich, not the poor. Fueling theirs and government's endless fleet of cars at the expense of the poor. Estimates show that the poorest 40% of the population consume just 3% of petrol. Fuel subsidies are killing the Nigerian economy, costing the economy of Nigeria $10 billion alone in 2022. Now that means that Nigeria is borrowing what it doesn't have to borrow for. If it simply eliminates these inefficient subsidies and uses the resources well for national development. Rather, support should be provided to private sector refineries and modular refineries to allow for efficiency and competitiveness to drive down fuel pump prices. The newly commissioned Dangote refinery, by Your Excellency, Mr. President, the largest single-train petroleum refinery in the world, as well as the petrochemical complex, will revolutionize Nigeria's economy. And congratulations to you, Mr. President. I'd also like to give congratulations to my dear brother, Aliko Dangote, for his amazing $19 billion investment. You got Nigerians, Mr. President, who believe in Nigeria. He's one of them. I am one of them. And we are many of us. We believe in Nigeria. Your Excellencies, there's also an urgent need to look at the cost of governance. The cost of governance in Nigeria is way too high and should be drastically reduced to free up more resources for development. Nigeria is spending very little on development. Today, Nigeria is ranked among the countries with the lowest human capital development index in the world, with a rank of 167 among 174 countries globally, according to the World Bank 2022 Public Expenditure Review Report. To meet Nigeria's massive infrastructure needs, according to this report, we require $3 trillion by 2050. According to the report, at the current rate, it will take 300 years to provide the minimum level of infrastructure needed for Nigeria's development. All living Nigerians today and many generations to come will be long gone by then. We must therefore change this and change it decisively. Nigeria must rely more on the private sector for infrastructure development to reduce the fiscal burdens on the shoulders of government. Your Excellencies, much can be done to raise tax revenue, as tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria is still low. This must include improving tax collection, tax administration, but moving from tax exemption to tax redemption, ensuring that multinational companies pay appropriate royalties and taxes, and that leakages in tax collection are closed. However, simply raising taxes is not enough, as many question the value of paying taxes, hence a high level of tax avoidance. Many citizens provide their own electricity, sink their own boreholes to get access to water, repair their roads in their neighborhoods and in their towns. These are essentially high implicit taxes. Nigerians, therefore, today pay the highest implicit taxes in the world. Governments need to ensure effective social contracts by delivering quality public services. It is not the amount collected, it is how it is spent and what it's delivered. Nations that grow better, they run effective governments that assure social contracts with their citizens. Your Excellencies, we must rebalance the structure and performance of the economy. A very common refrain in Nigeria with every successive government is, we need to diversify the economy. But is it really so? The economy of Nigeria is one of the most diversified in Africa. with the oil sector accounting for only 15% of the GDP, and 85% is accounted for by other sectors. Nigeria's challenge is not diversification. Nigeria's challenge is revenue concentration. And that is because the oil sector accounts for 75.4% of export revenue and 50% of all government revenue. The solution, therefore, is to unlock the bottlenecks that are hampering the 85% of the economy. These include low productivity, very poor infrastructure and logistics, despite gains being made, epileptic power supply, inadequate access to finance for small and medium-sized enterprises. Nigeria must also shift away from just relying on import substitution to export-focused industrialization. No team in soccer can ever win by playing defense. Every team that wins in soccer, they win by playing offense. When you do export-led industrialization, that's offense. That's how economics will grow, and that's how we will thrive. Your Excellencies, for faster growth, Nigeria must fix decisively the issue of power once and for all. There is no justification for Nigeria not having enough power. The abnormal have simply become normal. Nigeria's private sector is hampered by the high cost of power. Providing electricity will make Nigerian industries more competitive, especially within the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And it's actually not brain surgery. Let me give two examples, Kenya and Egypt. With the support of the African Development Bank, working with President Kenyatta, he was able to expand electricity access in Kenya from 32% in 2013 to 75% in 2022. What an incredible achievement in just a period of 10 years. Today, 86% of Kenya's economy is powered by renewable energy. And one project where I came to visit with the President is called the Last Mile Connectivity Project. With the bank's support, it allowed Kenya to connect the poorer households, 2.3 million of them, to electricity. And that's 12 million people provided with affordable connection to grid power. Thank you, Mr. President. It was a fantastic program. I'm just coming from Egypt. In 2014, Egypt had electricity deficit of 6,000 megawatts. Well, by 2022, Egypt had 20,000 megawatts of surplus power generation. Amazing. So it can be done. I'd like to commend the federal government under the leadership of the President for the tireless efforts being made in this area, with recent commissioning of several power projects across the country, and with so much private sector. But still much needs to be done. Nigeria should invest massively in renewable energy, especially solar. God loves Nigeria because solar, we got sun all the time in Nigeria. And that's why the African Development Bank is implementing $25 billion in what we call Desert to Power program to provide electricity for 250 million people all across 11 countries, including all the Sahel and including all of northern Nigeria. Your Excellencies, for inclusive development, which my dear sister Amina Mohammed just spoke about, Nigeria must completely revive its rural areas. Nigeria's rural areas are forgotten and have become zones of economic misery. To revive and transform these rural economies, we must make agriculture their main source of income, a business, and a wealth-creating sector. To be clear, agriculture is not a development activity. It is not a development sector. Agriculture is a business. The development of special agro-industrial processing zones will transform agriculture in Nigeria, add value for agricultural value chains, and attract private sector food and agriculture businesses into these rural areas. Special agro-industrial processing zones will help to turn the rural areas into new zones of economic prosperity and create millions of jobs. The African Development Bank, which you also support, Mr. President, Islamic Development Bank, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development are currently supporting Nigeria to implement a $518 million special agro-industrial processing zone program in 7 states of the country. And we've received, and the FCT, already we have requests from 19 states to have that done. We are ready, Mr. President and incoming Mr. Vice President and incoming President. We are fully ready to help you to expand this into every single state in Nigeria. And we are equally ready to help to revamp agricultural lending institutions to help modernize food and agriculture sector. Your Excellencies, the best asset of Nigeria is not its natural resources. Nigeria's best asset is its human capital. We must therefore invest heavily in human capital to build up Nigeria's skills that we need to be globally competitive in a rapidly digitized global economy. We must build world-class educational institutions, accelerate skills development in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as in ICT, computer coding, which are not the jobs of the past, but the jobs of the future. Your Excellencies, there is an urgent need to unleash the potential of the youth. Today, over 75% of the population of Nigeria is under the age of 35. This presents a demographic advantage, but it must be turned into an economic advantage. Nigeria must create youth-based wealth. We must move from the so-called youth empowerment programs. The youth do not need handouts, they need investments. The current banking system will not lend to the youth. If you're a young person, you go to a bank, they ask you, how old are you? You say 21 years old. They ask you, go bring your tax receipts for the last 25 years. How does that work? Special funds, while palliative in approach, are also not systemic and are also not sustainable. What is needed to unleash the entrepreneurship of the youth of Nigeria are brand new financial ecosystems that understands, values, promotes, and provide financial instruments and platforms for nurturing business ventures of the youth in Nigeria at scale. The African Development Bank and partners, including the Agence Française de Développement, Islamic Development Bank, and others, we launched right here in Nigeria the $618 million IDICE program to develop digital and creative enterprises. Mr. President, under your leadership, this is one of the great things I hope that you're most proud of. These things will create 6 million jobs and add $6.3 billion to Nigeria's economy. Your Excellencies, as I close, the African Development Bank is currently working with central banks and countries all across Africa to design and to support the establishment of youth entrepreneurship investment banks. These will be new financial institutions run by young, professional, highly competent experts and bankers to develop and deploy new financial products and services for businesses and ventures of young people. Several African countries have already agreed to set up the youth entrepreneurship investment banks. Nigeria should establish the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. Your Excellency, Mr. President, thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President-elect, let me now close. Nigeria's economy needs to soar. You have an incredible opportunity to make history by building a resurgent Nigeria, a united and prosperous Nigeria. It is Nigeria's turn. I wish you all the very best for success. May God bless you, may God help you, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President, African Development Bank, speaking on strengthening the Nigerian economy. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been spoken about youth inclusiveness and perspective of the youth in this inauguration lecture now comes with the next contributor, Dayo Israel, a holder of the LLB and Master of Arts in International Relations. He was named one of the 100 most influential people of African descent under 40 as part of the 2017 celebration of the UN Decade for People of African Descent at the One UN Plaza in New York. Dayo is a member of the British Council Global Changemakers Network, Connecting Futures Program, and a fellow of the US State Department International Visitors Leadership Program, which has produced over 400 heads of government globally. Presently, he's serving as the National Youth Leader of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in Nigeria. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Dayo Israel, National Youth Leader, All Progressives Congress, speaking on youth inclusiveness.
Your Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a fine gentleman who served this country with all honor and was looking forward to go back to Katsina on Monday by the grace of the Almighty, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Please clap for the President. My father, the President-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented here by the Lion of Borno. As a matter of fact, the Lion of Northeast of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, Excellency Abari Yaku, the former President of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta. I love Kenya a lot, I've been there a few times, and it's always great to listen to you speak, Mr. President. Excellency, the National Chairman of my great party, my own direct boss, distinguished Senator Abdullah Adamo. Let me, of course, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, the SGF, I'm very grateful for the honor to be here. All the distinguished guests present, including my Deputy National Chairman. I'm a party man, so please allow me, and the National Secretary of my great party, and my wonderful youth leaders of my party who are present here, other protocols duly extended. It is such an honor for me to stand here on this stage. I had a similar honor in 2002, October 1, when President Obasanjo was hosting his Independence Day event, and he hosted the Summit of Nigerian Children, ICO, and I had the honor of representing the children of Nigeria on this podium at that event. And a few years later, I'm here today representing the youth of Nigeria, in particular the youth of our party. And I want to begin by telling you a story. I love stories. A young boy was trying to kill a bee, and the father said to him, "Stop, don't do that." And the boy said to the father, "Daddy, what's wrong? It's just a bee." And the father said, "Don't you ever say it's just a bee. It's not just a bee. Because without this bee, thousands of plants around the world would go unpollinated. Without this bee, the rates of fruit and vegetable produce would decline and lead to famine. Without this bee, many crops would die and farmers will go bankrupt. Without this bee, the world will go without honey and we will eat our pancakes dry. It's not just a bee." And that reminds me that the bee here we're talking about is the wonderful young people of Nigeria. We're not just young people. We're not just youths. We're the lushness of this green land. The best resource, like Dr. Akinwumi Adesina spoke about, that Nigeria has to offer. The best export of our great nation, the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We may look insignificant. but we're over 60% of the population of this country, and more importantly, President Buhari, we are your tomorrow. And it reminds me of another story. President Kenyatta, you'll be familiar with your sister, Wangari Maathai. She spoke about the story of the human bed. And the story was about a bush that was burning. It was a strong fire in the forest, and all the animals were running away looking for an escape. And they were running, the lions, the tigers, the elephant, all of them were running out of the forest. And there was this little human bed, a small boy like me, sitting quietly. And then he observed that the nation was on fire. And what the human being did was fly to the nearest river, use his little beak to fetch some water, run back into the forest and pour it there. Run back to the river, got some water with the little beak, ran to the fire and pour it there. And all the other animals were smiling and laughing and say, "What do you think you're doing? Can you save this forest from the furnace?" And the human being looked at the elephant and all the other animals and said, "I may be just but a human being. As small as I am, I will do my best to save the forest from the fire." Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the youth of Nigeria, the human being. Our country has experienced military challenges over the years. We've gone through abuse, we've gone through many poverty challenges, but the youth of Nigeria has continued to be creative and innovative. In particular, with our creative industry, entertainment and sport, we're putting Nigeria on the map. We may not be able to end poverty in Nigeria in one day, but we're creating solutions in fintech, in sport, in entertainment. We're fighting poverty. We're creating corporations like Jumia. We're creating companies like the other company doing many other fintech companies across Nigeria. Andela, Flutterwave, many. That is our own way of being a human being, of solving Nigeria's unemployment and poverty problem. And so when you have the population that brings us the Grammy Award, that brings Nigeria on the entertainment scene, that brings on the screen in Antarctica, in the Caribbean, in North America, at the Grammys Award and the Emmys Award, why would you waste such a resource? What are we doing with this resource? And that's why yesterday at the Villa, we had an interaction with the president, Muhammadu Buhari. And everybody was thanking the president and said, "Thank you for Second Niger Bridge. Thank you for Maradi Trail Service. Thank you for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway." I said to Mr. President, "Sir, thank you for the Not Too Young to Run bill." Because by that single act of leadership of signing the Not Too Young to Run bill into law, it created a generational shift that made a 28-year-old girl become a member of the House of Representatives in this 10th Assembly. If you want to clap for the youth, clap for us. And so, if we're going to deepen democracy, we've got to deepen youth participation in the public sector and in good governance. We've got to give young people a seat at the table. But let me also warn leaders. We have decided among ourselves, if you don't give us a seat at the table, we will go to the Kugbo wood market, we will buy woods, we'll buy nails, we'll make our own chair, and we'll bring it to the table. We must deepen youth participation at all levels. At local government level, at House of Assembly level, at governorship level, at the Senate, National Assembly, and even at the top level. And that's why as I traveled across the country, campaigning for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, went to 33 states on my own, with my team of youth leaders engaging the youth in the community. Our message was simple. The Tinubu presidency is going to be an inclusive administration for young people, because it's going to come and work with us to build a Nigeria for us. The reality is that a future for us without us is not a sustainable future. And that's why as government, as people, we have a role to play. We have a lot to do. And to do that, we need to ensure that we create platforms for young people to get involved. And not just platforms like Youth Parliament or Youth Council. I was a former Deputy Senate President of the Nigerian Children's Parliament. So you can call me Distinguished Senator Dayo Israel. But beyond all of those youth platforms that we get, young people must begin to play mainstream politics. Their importance, you can never overemphasize it. I won't be standing before you here today, but for the opportunity to be in the Children's Parliament, to be a one-day commissioner for information under Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Lagos State under his one-day governor program, and also be a member of the British Council Connecting Futures program, the IVLP program, the Global Changemakers program, and many other activities created to give young people a chance. Those years of programs and activities prepared me, and I think that we need to do more to intensify platforms and opportunities to prepare the young people for the future. We need concerted effort to raise the next generation of Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, and because President Kenyatta is here, Jomo Kenyatta. We need to consciously create the next generation and build and mentor the next Muhammadu Buhari, the next Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Because Asiwaju did not get here in one day. It was a combination of many years, over 30 years of participation in governance preparation for where he is today. And so we need to begin to prepare that 20-year-old person, that 30-year-old person that is going to take over from you and lead Nigeria to the path of greatness than you have done. There are many like us who are out there, and you know that children are like arrows in the hand of the mighty. In other words, if you are a mighty man, you're going to war, you have an arrow in your hand. If you keep the arrow in your pocket or in your bag, it's useless. You've got to stretch your bow. You've got to pull back the arrow. That is only when it can bring you results. You've got many young Nigerians who are filled with talent, who are filled with skills. They're not perfect, but responsibility. And we're doing our best on our own. We're building empires in techs, in corporate financing. We're raising capitals, even more than some banks. Many of we are the ready generation. We only need an opportunity. We only need a seat at the table. We have excelled in sport. We've put Africa on the map. We have created results. We only need intergenerational collaboration because we're also responsible for the future of this country. We are going to be living in that future. And that's why, as I begin to wrap up, I want to take another wisdom from Joel chapter 1, verse 28. It says, in the last day I will pour my spirit upon flesh. And it says, your sons and daughter will prophesy. In other words, they will speak of the things that have not happened. It means they will be futuristic. They see tomorrow and they can begin to walk into creating that tomorrow. So if we have the capacity to create tomorrow, then you need to give us a seat at the table to help you build tomorrow. It says, and your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men will see vision. We need to help our young people, not just to see vision, but to run with that vision by building their capacity. And that's why I'm going to go into 3 different action points for all of us before I sit down. Action point number 1 for government. As government leaders, Vice President Shettima, the administration of the Tinubu Shettima must prioritize giving young people tools to become equal discussion partners like I am today. You must prepare us, provide a platform at which we can be more than just essays and SLAs and PAs, essay media, to give us real assignment, give us challenges. Let me borrow the word of Caleb in the scripture. Give us this mountain. But you must prepare us. We must prioritize building capacity, training, and reforming of the educational system. Before I came in to become National Youth Leader of the APC, I was privileged by the grace of God and with the support of my governor, Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, to be a permanent board member of the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board, SUBEB. And the reason I was a permanent board member of SUBEB was also because there was a policy in Lagos that said that our board must have a woman and a youth as members of the board. Vice President Shettima, it is our call on behalf of the youth of our party that the new administration should expand its policy to ensure that no board appointment, agency, parastatals without a young person as a member. Youth, am I speaking your mind? We are demanding a seat at the table. Every board, every agency, NNPC, NPA, NPIC, every board, a seat for young people. We have worked for the party. We have the capacity. We have the potential. We need the platform. Are we not ready? Can we not do it? Test us, sir. We need to give young people the skills to be able to compete globally. We need to create a platform for internship and volunteerism. Like Dr. Akiru Madeshino said, we must invest in youth innovation, youth community action, and youth enterprise. The many young people who are running development projects in their communities, NGO projects, they need grants, they need funding. We need to put money where our mouth is and support the young people. We must make it easy for young people to run for public office. And that's why I want to thank President Buhari one more time for the Not Too Young to Run bill. Building on that, I want to thank my national chairman, distinguished Senator Abdullah Adamu. I went to the NWC when we got elected, and I asked that they please consider giving the young people 50% discount on the nomination form of the party. From presidency, that was 100 million, governorship, that was 50 million, House, Senate, that was 10 or so million, and we were able to get 50% discount nomination form for young people 18 to 40. I want to thank all my NWC colleagues for supporting that, and the NEC members that gave that a life. Because of that, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President-elect, we have over 13 young people under 40 elected into this 10th National Assembly of Nigeria who took advantage of our discount on nomination forms. We must strengthen civic education. We must create a sense of history. We must create a platform for intergenerational engagement. We must introduce policies that deepens youth inclusion in governance, like the Lagos State Subeb law that allows for one young person to be on the board, and many more that the Tinubu-Shettima administration will bring to bear. And to our parents, let me speak to you fathers and mothers. We must be like, I'm going to refer to the scriptures again, like Anna, when she was raising Samuel. She raised him concertedly with a mindset that she was raising someone special. No child becomes great without a concerted effort from his or her parent. We must make an effort to concertedly raise the next generation. In the family, we must restore back values in the family. You must remember that you're raising a king. To you, my young brothers and sisters, the youth of our great nation, in this hall and those watching me on live television, I'm saying this to you. You must be ready to stand up and take responsibility. You must be ready to learn, unlearn, and relearn in any form, either through individual programs or by registering from programs like the Carrington Youth Fellowship, the Mandela Washington Fellowship, the yearly program, or some of the ones that I participated on, the IVLP International Visitors Leadership Program, the British Council Global Changemakers, Connecting Futures, and many more that will be created under the Tinubu-Shettima administration. You must be ready to go out, go online, go and sign up, go and apply, go and showcase your capacity. Don't wait there for manna to come on your table. You've got to go out of your tent. Go out there and volunteer. I started my NGO when I was 8. I remember in December, I think it was 1999, 2000. I was at the Ganifawa Emi Olisa Agbakoba's This Day lecture at the This Day Dome in Apapa Surulere in Lagos, Apapa, Lagos. I remember the 1 million march of Ganifawa Emi. I was in the crowd. In 1998, when Afsat Abiola came back to Nigeria to run Kind, I was the youngest at the table, myself, Jimmy Ate, Jikate, I think it was with NTA, Jikato, with NTA, Jimmy Ate, Collins Babalola, and many of Professor Wole Soyinka, a young boy in my school uniform, but already getting involved in the NGO. And that's why in 2002, May, I was selected to represent all the young people of Nigeria at the UN General Assembly Special Session on Children in New York, and came back to Nigeria to chair the ICOP in October. At a young age, I was already getting involved. I was volunteering. I was participating. I was doing community action in my secondary school. You have to be able to build your own future. You have to step out. You cannot wait for government to do it all for you. You need to take responsibility. We need to invest in digital literacy and provide access to information for young people. And let me wrap up, Your Excellency, with a story. A young boy went to an old man. I said the story at the villa some time ago. I'll repeat it. And he said, Baba, I want to know what the future holds for me. Is my future great or is it dim? And the old man said to the young man, what is in your hand? He said, I have a butterfly. He said, so what do you want to know? He said, I want you to tell me if this butterfly is dead or alive. The butterfly was alive in the hand of the young man, but his goal was that if the old man, wise old man, said that the butterfly was dead, he would open his hand and the butterfly would fly out. And if the old man said the butterfly was alive, he would crush it first and then open his hand to show the old man that the butterfly was dead. And the elderly man, like President Muhammadu Buhari, calm, quietly looked at the young man and said, young man, the life and the future of the butterfly is in your hands. Distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the life and the future, the growth, the progress of Nigeria over the next 4, at least, maybe 8 years, is in both of your hands. Do it right and carry the youth along. Thank you and God bless you.
Dr. Dayo Israel, National Youth Leader for the All Progressives Congress, speaking on deepening youth participation in governance. With perspectives for a better Nigeria, youth inclusiveness is very apt, especially as the youths are the driving forces of the nation. He stressed on the need to tap on the creativity of Nigerian youths, exploring and investing in human capital development that has continued to open new frontiers for Nigerian youth.
While Dayo Israel was speaking, Cyril and I felt that perhaps the definition of youth in Nigeria should involve myself and Cyril, irrespective of age, so that way we can borrow some of Dayo Israel's energy. But more than anything else, Dayo has spoken about intergenerational relationship and getting youth included and giving them a seat on the table. And if they do not get a seat on the table, they will make their own seat with a carpenter and bring their chair to the table. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dayo Israel. Excellencies, the chairman of the Presidential Transition Council and who is also the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, like I said at the beginning of the proceedings today, has led a stellar cast to deliver the inauguration activities, spending sleepless nights and staying awake to ensure that they deliver an incredible set of activities. For this particular activity, His Excellency, the SGF, has given responsibility to B.E. Jediagba, who is Chair, Permanent Secretary, and also Solicitor General, to hold the position of Chairman of the subcommittee of this inauguration lecture. And for her and members of her team, and for the SGF, let's hear a resounding Abuja round of applause. Excellencies, the inauguration keynote speaker, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, describes President Muhammadu Buhari as his brother. And the relationship between East Africa and West Africa is a long, long relationship for which I have benefited immensely. As he visits us this period, he must try those things that are close and a little bit different from ugali and chapati, sukuma wiki, and also modakoi. Your Excellency, Nigeria just holds the Guinness Book of Records with a young lady named Hilda Bassi for the longest cooking time for a cookathon. Her name, Hilda Bassi, and our jollof rice continues to be one of the finest in the world. And as we heard from one of our speakers, food can indeed become an economic resource and can become a business. Africa's food is indeed one of the best in the world, and we must promote it across board. It is delightful to be here this morning, and for all of us who are here in the room, we are making history. It is time, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to invite to the podium the Special Advisor to the President, Policy and Coordination, Dr. Habiba Lawal, to deliver a vote of thanks ahead of all the other speeches. Dr. Lawal, let's encourage her as she makes her way to the podium.
Your Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, Your Excellency, the Vice President-elect, Senator Kashim Shettima, Your Excellency, the former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellencies, please permit me to align with the already established protocol. On behalf of the Presidential Transition Council, I stand before you today to express our heartfelt gratitude as we bring this all-important lecture to a close. We are deeply humbled and honored by the overwhelming support and active participation from every one of you. We would like to extend our sincere appreciation to our esteemed guest speaker, former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, for gracing us with his presence and delivering an enlightening keynote address on deepening democracy for development. Your wisdom, insight, and experiences have provided us with invaluable perspectives on national unity and the role of democracy in advancement. Your presence here today serves as a testament to the strong bonds of friendship and collaboration between our two nations. Our deepest gratitude also goes to His Eminence, Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, Sultan of Sokoto, and the most revered Dr. Martin Hassan Kuka, Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, for sharing their profound thoughts on religious tolerance and inclusiveness. Your words have reminded us of the importance of embracing diversity, fostering religious harmony, and building a society that values and respects the rights and beliefs of its people. We would also like to express our appreciation to Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, and Amina J. Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, for their insightful discussions on strengthening the Nigerian economy in the Tinubu years and security and development, respectively. Your expertise and contributions have shed light on the critical areas that underpin our nation's progress and prosperity. We are truly grateful for your commitment to Africa's development and your dedication to supporting Nigeria's growth. A special note of thanks goes to Dayo Israel, National Youth Leader of the All Progressive Congress, for his enlightening presentation on youth inclusiveness in governance. Your passion for active participation of the younger generation in governance and their engagement is undoubtedly a great contribution to the evolution of our nation. We thank you. To the amazing organizing committee, volunteers, and other support staff, your enduring commitment and tireless effort has been the driving force behind this seamless, momentous lecture. Your dedication and organizational skills have been truly commendable. Thank you for your relentless hard work. We would also like to thank our esteemed guests, distinguished personalities, excellencies, scholars, and representatives from different sectors, members of the media, who actively and continue to echo our mandate. We thank you for coming. To the Secretary of the Government, to the Government of the Federation, my immediate boss Mustafa CFR, I say thank you for your exceptional leadership, meticulous planning, and commitment to excellence. Indeed, your strategic insights and attention to detail have played a pivotal role in shaping the philosophy and objective of this lecture. To the President-elect and the Vice President-elect, as you stand on the precipice of assuming the highest office in the land, you have been chosen to be the voice of the people, the guardian and of their hopes and aspirations, and the catalyst for positive change. The decisions you make will reverberate far beyond your term in office. I have no doubt that your leadership will be of positive transformation to leave behind a nation that is stronger, more united, and more prosperous. Lastly, and on behalf of the NTA, again, the Transition Council, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari for your unwavering, invaluable support and commitment to the whole transition process. Your Excellency, your vision, dynamic leadership, and dedication to fostering a democratic culture that values inclusivity and unity have laid the foundation for this remarkable gathering. We are truly honored to serve under your leadership and grateful for the opportunities you have created for sustainable national development. In conclusion, let us carry the spirit of this inauguration lecture with us as we leave this venue. May we continue to embrace the values of unity and democratic consolidation. Let us strive to bridge the divisions in our society, promote dialogue and collective responsibility, and work towards a future where every Nigerian feels valued, respected, and included in our nation's development trajectory. I thank you all for your kind attention, and may God bless our nation. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, Dr. Habiba Lawal, Special Advisor to the President, Policy and Coordination, and in her words, the President-elect, the Vice President-elect have been chosen to be the voice of the people. It is our hope that every Nigerian feels valued and respected and included in development. Let's hear another round of applause for Dr. Habiba Lawal. And on that note, Your Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for me to invite to the podium the man who sits as Vice President-elect, and he would be making his remarks in that position. His Excellency Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima.
Your Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, Your Excellency, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Deputy Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, the maverick politician Turaki Kepi, the National Chairman of the APC, and members of the NWC of the party, His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto, my Lord Bishop Hassan Matthew Kuka, the President of the ADB, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the Oni of Ipe, and my young brother, Dayo Israel, members of the National Assembly present here, our service chiefs, our other foremost traditional rulers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I begin by thanking President Muhammadu Buhari. Ali bin Abi Talib said, "Power does not change a man, it reveals a man." In 8 years of stewardship, you were subjected to the most cruelest of attacks. You are demonized. You are dehumanized. You are even robbed of your humanity. You are called the brain of Sudan. But never for a single moment did you harass or use any extrajudicial means to extract vengeance. About a year ago, the nation was at the brink of an implosion. There was acute agitation for a power shift. For the first time in the contemporary history of Nigeria, I dare to be contradicted by anybody. For the first time, a sitting president provided the enabling environment for the conduct of a just and fair primaries in his political party. That was how President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged as the flag bearer of the APC. And as H.S. Aga said, the truth that sets men free is most often the truth that men prepare not to hear. The digital anarchists can say whatever they want, but the truth is that President Muhammadu Buhari conducted the fairest and just election in the contemporary history of this nation. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Your actions are so loud that I do not hear what you say." Beyond the famous handshake of Raila Odinga, on March 26, 2021, at the burial of late President John Magufuli of Tanzania at the Jamhuri Stadium in Dodoma, Tanzania, the then President Uhuru Kenyatta was eulogizing late President John Magufuli. At about 12:52 to 12:55 p.m., there was a call to prayer and adhan from a nearby mosque. President Uhuru Kenyatta paused as a mark of respect to the Muslim people. After the call of prayer, he said, "Oleni wafeni mendili kwa kusema." Let me continue with my speech. And the dramatic pause was welcomed with raucous applause by all our attendees. Mayo Angelo said, "I have come to learn that people may forget what you said. People may forget what you did, but people may never forget what you have made them feel." He made me feel proud as an African. He made me proud as someone who believes in the progress and unity of the African nation. The Sultan of Sokoto spends a greater time of his time crisscrossing the length and breadth of this nation, fostering unity and diversity for our great nation. And my very good friend, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, like Gani Pawahimi, is not a man of in-between. He's the gadfly, the infant terrible. You either love him passionately or hate him intensely. When he attended the interreligious conference at the Vatican along with the 14th Emir of Kano Muhammad Sanusi II, Cesar Aleta, a Spanish telecoms giant mogul, offered $1 billion to the Catholic Church. The Catholic pontiff is a Jesuit priest who believes passionately in education. He advised Cesar Aleta to invest that fund in education in the developing world. And Bishop Kuka and the 14th Emir invited him to come to northern Nigeria. That was how the Pro Futuro experience started unveiling here in Nigeria. And lo and behold, the religious merchants went to town that Bishop Kuka is trying to Christianize the North. I came out and defended him. And there was a payback time about 8 years down the line when I emerged as the vice presidential candidate of the APC. People expected him to come out firing on all cylinders. They never knew of my relationship with Matthew Kuka. He chose the path of the golden mean and said, look, Nigerians, you all have to write. You all have the right to vote for the candidates of your choice, but we don't have to demonize any person. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I began my boss's speech by thanking our esteemed keynote speaker, His Excellency Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, for his remarkable address. As a leader of a great and proud African nation, you have personally managed the crucial yet often difficult interplay between democracy and development. We were all cultivated and listened with unbroken attention to your portrayal of the political, economic, and social forces that describe the arena of national governance. Like you, I am an African. I love our continent dearly. If I were asked 100 times to choose my own birthplace, then 100 times over I will choose to be an African and a Nigerian. I am proud to belong to this lineage and to be of this place. My heart beats proudly to see how my fellow Nigerians and Africans are creating their own democratic, political cultures and institutions to fit the conditions and challenges of their societies. The essence of democracy merges dialogue, justice, and fair play. That it is more than a form of government. It is a way of life, a distinctive manner of thought and conduct for a leader. As such, it challenges each leader to be his better self, and this can be difficult at times, but remains indispensable to the steady functioning of democracy. Democracy is a benign paradox. It guarantees freedom, yet its survival is dependent on the responsible and limited use of that freedom. In the long run, it is the best form of government because it allows the majority to have its way while safeguarding the fundamental interests of the minority. It is forever a work in progress, a road that never ends, yet one that grows finer and less wearisome the more you walk it. I hold precious our democracy, not as a tidy abstraction, but as a pragmatic vessel that can take this nation to safer harbor in all aspects of our collective existence. Through the lenses of our national experience, I can see the scales balancing the merits of democracy against those other forms of government. I can see plainly that an imperfect democracy is better than the most perfect dictatorship. It is more just, more humane, and even more productive. We have emerged from one of the most fiercely contested elections in the annals of humanity, and the resounding echoes of the promises we have made serve as a haunting reminder that failure is a luxury we cannot afford. We are surrounded. We are surrounded by the expectations of our citizens, the skepticism of our opponents, and the chain of chaotic events that necessitate the proper functioning of democracy. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I stand on this elevated ground, what I behold are not mere individuals. I see a visual manifestation of the expectations placed upon us in this hall. The allure of this system of governance lies not in the ostentation of authority. What distinguishes democracy is the recognition that power is not ours to claim. We, adorned in flowing robes and fancy suits, are but servants, duty-bound to never underestimate the true proprietors of this power. We are here to serve. We are here to listen. We are here to be held accountable. We are not saints on an evangelical mission. Therefore, like every mortal, we may stumble here and there. However, none of these mistakes will be intentional. We shall never be oblivious to the impermanence of this power, and we acknowledge that we shall be judged by man, time, and God. No doubt, our hearts swell with gratitude. No doubt, assuming the mantle of leadership in these troubled times warrant deep reflections. We shall undoubtedly honor and celebrate this opportunity. Yet I implore you, let the strength of our jubilation be hushed, for now is not the time to revel in the enchantment of triumph. Instead, let us come together in solemn unity and recognize the realities that afflict our nation. As Winston Churchill said, truth is so precious that it has to be surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. In politics, a lot of lies are being traded on as the truth. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was a child of necessity. There is no any Islamization agenda. Bola Tinubu, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a Muslim who is married to a Christian. Not only a Christian, but a pastor of the Redeemed Christian Church of God. Someone who has not Islamized his family. People are alluding that he has the intention to Islamize the nation. The likes of Bishop Booker, I want to commend them for giving testimony to the truth. When I was the governor of Borno State, Borno is 90% Muslim. Churches were destroyed by the Boko Haram insurgents in southern Borno. When I expressed my desire to rebuild those churches, I was advised against it. It's tantamount of political harikiri for you to embark on such a venture. But I told the people that the Christians in Borno are stakeholders in the Nigeria project. They are my brothers and sisters. I went ahead and rebuilt those churches. And politics is about perception, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we begin the formation of a new administration, I deliberately picked an Igbo man, a Catholic, to be my chief security officer. Stand up for recognition, please. For the purpose of inclusivity and togetherness, again, I deliberately picked a Northern Christian to be my ADC. So the so-called founder of Boko Haram is going to be protected by... Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the odyssey that lies ahead shall test our mettle, patience, and resilience. It shall also demand sacrifice and unyielding resolve. But we shall confront uncomfortable truths. The observations by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina are poignant. And I want to differ from the perspective of my junior brother, Dayo Israel. There won't be a Tinubu-Chetima administration. There is an outgoing Buhari administration. There will be a Tinubu administration. As Spyro Agnew said, I had all vices, including the office of the vice president. A vice president is as powerful as his loyalty to his principal. I don't want to be presumptuous and make loud pronouncements, but definitely the issues highlighted about the fuel subsidy removal, about the realignment of the exchange rates, multiple exchange rates, will certainly be addressed by President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So I stand here, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, imbued with a profound conviction that in unity, we are going to move a mountain. I implore on all Nigerians to give us the benefit of the doubt, to invest your trust and confidence in the Tinubu project, to believe in the Nigeria project. In spite of the division that permeated our politics,
in the last 2023 presidential elections. The most Christian of northern states is Benue. Benue is 90% Christian, but the Nigerian candidate defeated the religious candidate in Benue state. We won 2 of the 3 Senate seats. We won 10 out of the 11 House of Representatives seats, and we won the governorship seat in Benue state. The most northern of northern states is Sokoto. The Nigerian candidate lost to the regional candidate by a mere fraction in Sokoto. We won 2 Senate seats in Sokoto, and we won the gubernatorial race in Sokoto. So finally, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, what binds us together supersedes whatever that divides us. Thank you so much, and may God bless us all.
Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima, GCON. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, just a couple of notifications. Just to bring to your notice quickly that after the morning's events, that is after the President has spoken, there'll be a photo shoot, and it will be in 2 batches. Let me just quickly acquaint you with that. That's after his speech. The President will be in a photo shoot with the Vice President-elect, with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and 4 of the 5 contributors who spoke here today. They'll be in a photo shoot, and then for the second part of it, they will be joined by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Head of Service, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, the APC National Chairman, and the APC National Secretary. That's for the photo shoot. May I also bring to your notice that after his speech, the President would be stepping in to take a look at the inauguration exhibition of Nigerian arts and crafts at the Executive Hall. He will declare that open. And once he has done that and taken his leave, other guests are encouraged to also go into the Executive Hall after the President has done with the business of declaring it open, to also have a look at the exhibition of Nigerian arts and crafts. That's at the Executive Hall. And now, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to now deliver his address, may I invite His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That's official one here. Yeah. Please sit down. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, former President of the Republic of Kenya, Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, the governors present here, members of the National Assembly, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, honorable ministers, Deputy Secretary General, United Nations President, President Africa Development Bank, Chairman and principal members of All Progressive Congress, Chief of the Staff and the Service Chiefs, our royal fathers, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of this important inauguration lecture, I stand before you with profound sense of pride and gratitude. Today, we have embarked on a journey of introspection, enlightenment, and collective growth. We have delved deep into the theme of deepening democracy for development and explored the lessons that will guide us as we transition to a new era. Throughout this lecture, we have recognized the challenges and divisions that have tested the very fabric of our nation. We have confronted the harsh realities of inequality, the persistence of corruption, and the imperative to empower all citizens. But more importantly, we have unearthed the transformative power of democracy and the immense potential it holds for our great nation. In the course of this lecture, we have learned that democracy is not merely a system of governance. It is a way of life. It requires active participation, inclusivity, and relentless pursuit of justice and fairness. We have understood that true democracy thrives when the voices of all citizens are heard, valued, and represented, regardless of their background or social status. The underlying philosophy of this lecture has been rooted in the belief that our nation's progress rests on the pillars of unity, inclusivity, and shared responsibility. We have acknowledged that the task of nation building is a collective one, transcending political affiliations and personal interests. It is a commitment to leaving no Nigerian behind, ensuring that every citizen feels the positive impact of good governance and enjoys the dividends of democracy. The lessons we have learned here are not mere intellectual exercises, but a call to action. As I prepare to hand over the reins of governance to the President-elect on the 29th of May, I am filled with a renewed sense of hope, hinged on the capacity of my successor, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to deliver on the assignment given to him by Nigerians. I am at the same time reminded of the immense responsibilities entrusted upon us as leaders and the tremendous potentials that lies within our great nation. We must heed the lessons of this lecture and translate them into concrete actions. We must continue to prioritize the welfare and well-being of our citizens, providing them with quality education, accessible health care, and sustainable livelihoods. We must fight against corruption in all its forms, unfolding the principles of transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. But above all, we must remain united. Our diversity is our strength, and it is through dialogue, understanding, and respect we can overcome our differences and forge a common path towards progress. Let us foster an environment where every Nigerian has an equal opportunity to thrive, regardless of their background, ethnicity, religion, or social status. As I conclude, I want to express my deep appreciation to the esteemed speakers, most especially our keynote speaker, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, for once again accepting my invitation to share his wealth of knowledge with us. Indeed, your thought-provoking lecture and the perspective shared by the panel of eminent Nigerians has left an indelible mark on our collective consciousness. I thank the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and members of his team for a job well done. To the President-elect, I offer my heartfelt congratulations and assurance of my unwavering support. I trust that you will lead our nation with integrity, vision, and a deep commitment to the ideals of democracy and national development. Let us remember that the true measure of our success lies not in the titles we hold or the positions we occupy, but on the positive impact we make on the lives of our fellow citizens. Together, let us march forward, guided by the lessons learned from this lecture, and build a Nigeria that is prosperous, inclusive, and anchored on the principles of democracy. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The President will now be joined in a photograph right now by the Vice President-elect, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the 5 contributors. His Eminence Mohammed Saad Abubakar, Sultan of Sokoto,